It's to rugby. We turn just coming up on 10 to 9 on this cold Friday morning. We are delighted to have you along with us, and plenty of comments coming in as well, including for Alan Quinlan and Mike Tindall, who are going to be joining us shortly to preview the Ireland-England game. So keep those comments coming in and we'll bring them to the two lads. But the rumours started early in the week that Robbie Henshaw could be starting at 15 for Ireland. It was confirmed yesterday afternoon by Joe Schmidt. And here's the Irish Independent's Rory O'Connor on Henshaw's credentials at 15.
So in 2017 he lost, he pretty much knew he was losing Jarrah Payne to retirement, and he knew that Simon Zebo was gone to France and was thus ruling himself out of the equation. And while Rob Carney has been an unbelievable servant who always delivers for Ireland, he wasn't sure what he had underneath that in terms of full-back options. Now he has good players. He's Jordan Larmour, who's come through in the last year. He has Will Addison, who primarily plays at centre for Ulster but is able to cover full-back well. He's Andrew Conway, again plays mostly on the wing for Munster but is an accomplished full-back. So he doesn't get many opportunities to try it, and he tried. I think he put Henshaw on the bench against Fiji in 2017 November, and the way the game went, he couldn't bring him on there. Joey Carberry got injured. They needed to win the game. He put him on in the centre. There was some talk that during the November internationals he was going to get a run there as well, but he pulled his hamstring. And I guess at this stage you've got 5 games in the Six Nations that are competitive until the World Cup, because the World Cup warm-up games are warm-ups and they're not, they will be mixed and matching, but it doesn't count for much. And Joe Schmidt is in his final year. He's won the Grand Slam. He's won 2 Six Nations apart from that Grand Slam, 3 in total. So while he wants to win this and spring into the World Cup from this, he at the same time probably doesn't have the pressure on him from the IRFU perspective about winning it, that he's not going to throw it by any means. And I don't think this decision means he's going to throw it, but I think he's got a little bit of freedom in which to experiment, and this is a huge experiment to put in, because for all that Carney has played very little rugby, Henshaw's played less since November.
That hasn't been actually made much of a point of it all.
Yeah, so Henshaw came back, played 60 minutes for Leinster against Wasps, played really, really well, and is the kind of player who generally comes back and hits the ground running. But he's had an injury hit year. He's clearly able to do it at a certain level, and I believe that he will be able to do it on Saturday. I think he is more than capable of stepping up to the mark. He's a really accomplished rugby player in every part of the game, but we've never seen him. He's won one cap for Ireland in the fullback role. That was in 2013. His debut as a 19-year-old against the United States. I was there over in Houston. It didn't go particularly well for him, but then he was a teenager making his debut, so it's pretty irrelevant now. So it's a massive decision.
It's Rory O'Connor on Wednesday Night Rugby with Johnny Ward during the week. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning, Adrian.
How's the form?
Very good, no. Yeah,
You're
looking forward to the weekend.
I was sort of looking at the lineup for the Legends game, expecting to see the big man packing down.
No, I'm doing France, commentary for France v Wales tonight on Virgin Media.
Are you happy about that? Do you play at all anymore?
No, I played that game 2 years ago, and that's it, the boots are gone.
It's not really the sort of thing it's not like a five-a-side you can sort of tip away at when you're done.
Most of the guys are kind of do a little bit of training anyway, but I would have played if I wasn't doing France-Wales tonight. It's good crack.
Yeah, for good cause as well, so people can pick up tickets. I think it's available on the gate down at the RDS, so get yourselves down there for some great causes, obviously. The big talking point, obviously, that we'll get to, but Henshaw in a few minutes' time. It does feel, Quinny, though, a lot of the conversations that we're having about the Six Nations upcoming are all in the kind of context of Rugby World Cup. In a way that I can't quite remember it being that way before. I presume that our expectations of ourselves are so high that, and because we've been so successful in the Six Nations over the last few years, it's not that we're not worried about it, but everything is kind of, is this a team that's going to start in the World Cup? It's all in a World Cup context, really.
Yeah, it is, and it's the first time that we've we were on the back of a Grand Slam. I know we won it in 2009, but then there was 2 years to the World Cup. Essentially, this one there's extra pressure given what happened in November, being second in the world. People are saying, it's the World Cup that counts, but I think Six Nations titles are very, very important as well. And any of the players who'll be in the squad and involved, given the depth and the quality of players that are there now, there's so many options in so many different positions that they won't be slackening off any little bit. And I suppose it's the perception of the tournaments now. Is it more important than the World Cup? No, the World Cup is probably the bigger thing at the end of the year. But I think for this team to continue building momentum and to try and win a championship again, you've got to deal in the here and now, you know what I mean, and not kind of forfeit success for potential success down the road. But so it is massive. I think at the end of it, when you look back, people will say if it didn't go great for Ireland, if they lost a game or two, well, it doesn't really matter. It won't have a psychological damaging effect on them, I don't think, unless they completely capitulate, which is not going to happen.
Do you think that, so like we've been discussing the whole Liverpool scenario and the little bit of a blip they had during the week and the impact that, regardless of how it came about, right, whether they froze because they went inside of the line or whether, like Owen was saying, maybe they just had a bit of an off day, regardless of how it came about, it'll take on a greater significance. And that's maybe the only concern from an Irish point of view going into the Six Nations, that, like Owen was saying, maybe the Scotland game is the most important one. But if there is a blip somewhere along the line, suddenly Ireland start to question themselves in a way that maybe they hadn't done before.
Potentially, I think dealing with pressure, and no matter how many times you speak about it, and I remember Ireland go to Murrayfield 2 years ago and you know, genuinely spoke about the threats, and Scotland were coming good and they were going to be very dangerous, and you try and get everything right as a player and as coaches, and some things just don't go your way on the day, and the opposition play that little bit better. And you know, we've seen so many times in sporting events where the better team doesn't always win, or the favourites don't win, and they freeze in the day, something goes wrong, a big decision goes against them, and you know, Ireland have to deal with all that kind of stuff now, and signing good teams is coping with that. And sometimes you have a blip, and that pressure does tell, even though, you know, Joe Schmidt and his team and his coaches, they'll be, for the last few months since November, they'll be preparing for this and trying to get the minds right and monitoring and talking to players. So you can't overemphasize it too much, because then you're kind of, you're staying in a negative zone that about the what ifs and this could happen and that could go wrong. You don't do that. I think you just got to try and, the challenge is to try and focus on what they're doing well and what they have to do in the game, and understand the threat of a big physical English side. And rugby is a game of small margins. It can change very quickly. You can put a weaker team out in the field, a perceived weaker team against a stronger team, and if they're physically more dominant, they can win the game, and they can win the collisions, and they can, you know, kick the leather off the ball and play in the opposition half and just force the more talented team into making mistakes. I'm not saying there's any difference with talent tomorrow. I think Ireland are in a more confident place as regards their form. But this English side that Eddie Jones has picked is an incredibly powerful side who could easily challenge for the Six Nations. They could get a win tomorrow and they could be going for Grand Slams and stuff, you know. So they've to go to Cardiff as well. It's a bit trickier for them. But they've 3 games at home. So effectively, in my opinion, it's kind of a mini championship decider. First up, Wales, France tonight. If Wales were to get a win in Paris, they're on a roll. And you know, if Scotland were to beat Ireland next week, you know, they'd be 2 from 2 because they'll beat Italy tomorrow. So a lot can happen in the Six Nations, and historically, we've been a little bit slow out of the blocks. I hope we're quicker out of the blocks. And Joe Schmidt said that during the week. This is a game that just ignites you, focuses you, and you know, dealing with that extra little bit of pressure will be intriguing to see, because invariably for any team, you're going to have an off day, or the opposition are going to have the purple patch. So their discipline needs to be good tomorrow, and they need to, you know, play to their strengths. And you know, I think John Mitchell was talking about Ireland being boring at the start of the week. Last year, they scored the most tries in the Six Nations, and they were the most dominant team. They were a little bit slow, particularly in that first game in Paris, where France unsettled them a bit and frustrated Ireland at the breakdown and stuff. So they'll probably have to deal with pressure from England tomorrow, a different type of physical pressure, similar to New Zealand, I think, and they coped really well there.
It seems, like you say there, Ireland aren't likely to capitulate. It seems that if you want any coach in the world to be in charge of your team when you're favourites for a game, it is Joe Schmidt.
Yeah, I think so. He'll try and keep them grounded, and you know, look, people always say, you know, when a team that's probably favourites to win lose, or they took their eye off the ball, or they didn't.
That won't happen.
No, they won't. Good teams and top teams, top professional sides, don't take their eye off the ball. Sometimes the opposition just come with an extra bit of energy or enthusiasm or aggression. And they win the 50-50 collisions, because tomorrow's 50-50. A lot of the stuff, I think we probably have a little edge now before the game. At the breakdown with O'Mahony and Van der Fleer and Standard are very good at the poach. Mark Wilson, Vunipola and Tom Curry are probably not as dominant at the breakdown. Tom Curry is a super player, to be fair, the number 7. He's very effective at the breakdown, very similar to Van der Fleer, full of energy and pace around the field. He's still only 20, it's phenomenal. I just think a 20-year-old playing international test match rugby as a 7,
in that position,
who played tests in South Africa a few months ago, so it's phenomenal, but they won't underestimate him. Yeah, Joel will keep him focused, and I think he has said it, and sometimes you say it's coaches speak. You've got to focus on your strengths and make sure you implement your game plan. Of course, the individual players will watch videos and want their opposition, and collectively, Andy Farrell will have presented, Simon Easter will present videos about their lineouts, all that kind of stuff. The attack, Joe will have showed there a lot of the stuff, and you have to be conscious of that stuff, and then try and pick holes and find ways of. And some games, essentially, you have to just roll up the sleeves and say, well, it might be a bit of a slugfest, and there may be 3-6 points in it from penalty goals or drop goals. It was interesting. I was chatting to Clive Woodward a little while ago, and this morning for breakfast radio, and he seems to think that England, if they can get the scoreboard ticking over with an early penalty, maybe a drop goal or two, that they'll settle and that they'll be happy with a bit of a slugfest as well. So you might get two teams cancelling each other out, or we may see.
Yeah. Well, they won't care if it's boring and they get.
No, nobody will care.
Can I, just the one thing that strikes me is it's not a fantastic stretch of the imagination to suggest that this 15 that starts tomorrow could actually be our first pick 15 come the World Cup. Like Van der Fleer possibly might be the one that you may sort of switch in and out, but that notwithstanding, that the rest of them, that might be the shape of it.
Yeah, it's very close to it. Anyway, you'd imagine that all the big names are in there. There's still a fair few guys chomping at the bit there and trying to force people off that team. And I think he's in a position now, Joe, that he can make changes. You look at someone like the two players, Henderson and Byrne. You could easily start either of those in the second row.
Is it the 15 that will start the World Cup, do you think?
I don't know. I think it'll be close to it. If players dip in form, the back row is an area where it could change very, very quickly. You know, Levy was outstanding last year in the Six Nations and for Leinster. Van der Fleer is you know, he's been sensational since he's, you know, you think back 12 months ago, he damaged his cruciate. He was the starting 7 in Paris. How can all flip around so quickly? He was out for a long period. Jack Conan will certainly not want to buy into the perception that CJ Stander is there to stay for the next couple of years, even though Standers has been, you know, so consistent in his performance. So the coaches will want that kind of hunger and desire. Rhys Ruddock, Jordy Murphy, you know, there's a fair few guys in the back row, loose forwards there can challenge and maybe make change. You think Will Addison is someone who could potentially, Andrew Conway, you know, Rob Carney's not going to be pleased, is he, losing out as full back? And so there's a number of guys there, and the whole idea is to have more depth at the World Cup and maybe change. On
that point, is it surprising in some ways that I know that it seems as if it was the intention to have played Henshaw at 15 during the Novembers at some point, but he obviously picked up that injury and it didn't get to happen. I think it might have been Gavin Cumiskey that had written that during the week. So I understand that it's not just in a World Cup year that he wanted to play him there, that there was a little bit of a gap before that. But it does strike me as the one position where, when we talk about the possible replacements, which we've done over the last few weeks, that actually we're not as well stacked with specialists as we are for almost every other position on the pitch.
Because Larmer can play there, Carberry, Will Addison can play there, Rob Carney obviously is the one who's been there for a long, long time and been brilliant.
Does it matter that we don't have those specialists? Is that just something that, from all of us looking in, sort of?
Ideally, you'd have specialists, guys in the 4 provinces, 4 Irish qualified players playing 15 kind of week in, week out for the big games, and that are natural full-backs. So, you know, I remember watching Robbie Henshaw when he started out with Connacht playing as a full-back and being incredibly dangerous hitting the line, and he's a wonderful footballer. The only difference about playing as a fullback, and I spoke to Johnny Lacey, who's the international referee at the moment. He played with Munster and he played with Shannon for me for years, and Johnny was brilliant full-back in my opinion, and he achieved a fair bit. And I just kind of asked him, and he's obviously a player development coach as well, so he's very, very much into the intricacies of playing as a full-back and being a skills coach. And he's, you know, I was asking what's different about full-back. Well, you can put very good footballers at full-back, but you still need to have a kind of a cool mind and a visual excellence for not where the ball is landing, but where you think it's going to land, if that makes sense, Adrian.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously when the ball is at the base of a ruck, you can see full-backs, they're shimmering a little bit and they're anticipating whether the 9 is going to box kick or kick long, but they're also kind of anticipating if the 10 gets it, is he going right, is he going left? If centres have it, are they going to put grubbers through to try and get wingers to free up the winger chasing onto the ball? So it's all about anticipation, and it's not just the full back, it's the back three. So Stockdale and Earls will be very important in their communication, in how they kind of sweep over and back and cover. And sometimes the full back is the last, he's the last man, he's the last tackler. You know, the winger comes in and the full back is usually the person that you want making that last tackle, and you need him sweeping across. So they'll have worked a lot on that. He's a very intelligent player, Robbie Henshaw. He's an incredible footballer. You know, if there was a Lions team being picked in the morning, Henshaw would be in the mix.
What position?
Well, he's definitely going to. You know what? If he'd be in a stronger position now if he performs well as a full back, because you're saying he can play loads of different positions. But Robbie Henshaw's a guy you can put on the wing. He can play 12, 13, 14, 15. It's tough on Rob Carney, but I think the reason it's happened is obviously because of form, and then to try and get an outstanding rugby player on the field as well with Aki and Ringrose.
Joe Schmidt was talking about in his press conference yesterday about his decision to start Henshaw at 15.
Robbie trained last week. He trained in November, a little bit of fullback, so he actually trained a little bit in Australia, so it's been something that has been an option for us for quite some time, and Rob ran out of time a little bit, and we like the flexibility of Jordan on the bench, covering a number of positions. I thought he came on really well last season against England, coming into 13 and having to play the last 35 minutes. So, it's one of those things that we've seen as an option for quite some time. So it's probably not as much of a surprise to Robbie or the team as it maybe is to other people.
Yeah, not much of a surprise, but is it still a risk considering his lack of game time at international level at the moment?
Yeah, it's probably more risk is lack of game time, full stop. He hasn't actually played that much himself. We got to a situation where we had a few different options there, and really we just felt the way he trained when we were away and the way he's trained this week, that it was worth pursuing.
So clearly, Robbie Henshaw's doing something right at 15 in training, Alan.
Well, excuse me. That's it, and he puts a lot of emphasis on how they train as well, and the training is pretty high intensity, and he's seen stuff, so it's not for us to kind of challenge that. It is a risk, there's no doubt about it. He'll probably understand himself that it is a little bit risky, but he's confident in his ability to do the job there, and I think there's a similar situation maybe a little bit with England, with Elliot Daly at fullback. He's not a natural fullback. I think wing is probably his specialist position as well, and Eddie Jones pushed him in there last year, and he wasn't successful there. When you think of maybe Mike Brown, he's probably similar to Rob Carney, isn't he? Maybe with just absolute security and...
But Daly's more of a risk than Henshaw, isn't it? Is it? Do you like just because of the way Ireland play and because of the balls that he's got?
Daly's played there in recent test matches, so it's probably not. We haven't seen Robbie Henshaw there.
Schmidt avoided the question when he was asked, is it a risk playing at 15? He said, well, it's a risk playing at all because he hasn't played very much, and totally avoided the question about his specifically at 15. So clearly, I mean, to me that says that...
I think he'll be successful.
Why wouldn't you be a little bit concerned
I think he'll be successful. Like I said, just some of that positional stuff. And we mightn't even notice that. The layperson mightn't even notice that. It's just being a yard ahead of where the ball is.
Is he in Rob? I mean, I don't know, right? But is he in Rob Carney's ear this week, going, "Listen, give me what you got"? Henshaw?
Yeah, look, I think he'll be very, very disappointed, Rob Carney. He's a very competitive person, and he's had a few, small setbacks before. He's had a few injuries, but he's been probably our most decorated player with the success he's had. I don't think he'll be kind of willingly going up and saying do this, this and this, because it's not natural, and I don't think Robbie Henshaw will be looking for it. But if the advice is asked for, I'm sure it'll be given. They're close, they're teammates in Leinster, and they'd be close to each other. But look, he's got to dust himself down now, Rob Carney, and the wheel can turn very, very quickly. There was talk before the November series that after Jordan Larmour's performance against Italy that he'd start against the All Blacks, but they went back to Rob Carney, and he's never let the side down, and I sense that it could happen again. It may happen again. There might be a reshuffle in the centre for Scotland, who knows, but it's tough on him, but he's got to deal with it this week now. Just
on Elliot Daly, we might put this point to Mike Tindall, but Austin Healy is saying in the Telegraph this morning that there might be a situation where Billy Vunipola just drops back behind Daly during Conor Murray's box kicks, because if you catch cleanly Conor Murray's box kick, then you're in trouble as well in terms of penalties, etc., etc. So what do you think? Is that something
a lot of teams can do that? They drop a back row, a 6 or an 8 back to, in the backfield to maybe catch and carry, or if the winger or fullback catches it, that they have an option to pass, or they're the first person to clean out that breakdown to help them. So yeah, it's something that could happen. The execution is vital here, that the kick is not too deep and it's contestable. And if it's contestable, then it's very effective, So they could well drop someone backfield, yes.
A few comments coming in. Michael Duffy, come on Ireland, what a team and squad that they're incredible. The Dubs and Irish rugby have set the bar high. You having that?
They sure have, the Dubs have. I'm a fan of the Dubs, even though I'm a tip man. Yeah, but the bar, when you're on that high, it's a challenge to keep it going, isn't it? This is a bit different than... This is a bit more evenly matched, shall I say, than the Dubs, because they're incredible side and more. And
it's like Dublin versus Kerry, is what you're saying.
Really, really strong favourites when they play.
The top 2 favourites for the All-Ireland.
Typically Kenny in the hurling, more like.
Genuinely, there's 4. I know I'll confuse people if I start going into the matches and the what-ifs, but, Wales, if they win in Paris tonight, they're on a run. They're on a roll. They're up front first. They've got England in Cardiff, they'll fancy that. They've got Ireland in Cardiff. They're going to beat Italy, and then they've Scotland in Murrayfield, So they like, if they get on a roll, they're all what ifs. Scotland themselves, like I say, if they beat Ireland next week, they do have 2 tricky ones away, but they've won in Paris before, and they've got to go to Twickenham. So it's very evenly matched, and I think there'll be a few ups and downs in this tournament. France, who knows what they'll be like.
Yeah.